on this computer, that's important as well. And we're recording. Okay, now this, what I want to move on to tonight, we're now moved on to chapter 4. I'm obviously just extracting little bits as we go along. And then I suppose Pesach coming. Well, we're coming up to Pesach. We'll see what happens after that. It'd be lovely for all our houses. We don't have to worry about what we're worrying about at the moment. But anyway, chapter 4. This is in this particular. Now the shir, of course, is set out because people are stuck at home because of coronavirus. I just heard tonight, tragically, of a Talmud from Yeshiva, a young man, 24, 25, who just passed away, and a very old friend of mine, dying West Timers of Manchester, who just passed away. So forgive me if I'm feeling that we've got to make sure our approach is correct. Now, the shares on Shara Bitachon, the great writer Rabbeinu Bachia on the book of Bitachon, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Now, the Lubavitcher, I think, is a different world to the world of Musar, but he was very keen that his Chassidim studied this book. In my version, my translation, it's in page 162. Notice the way I assume that everybody's got my translation. But anyway, let's begin with the first sphere. Now, here he's going to be talking about various elements that are absolutely essential for a person to have Bitachon. And then he says, so I want to discuss here, everything affects your physical well-being. So of course that very much resonates with us now in the middle of this coronavirus. So again, everything that affects your physical well-being and how trust in Hashem affects matters solely concern your physical existence. These include your life, death, food, clothing, shelter, health, and sickness. Okay, the correct approach to all these matters is to conduct yourself according to the path mapped out for you by Hashem. This approach has to be framed by the knowledge that nothing occurs to us in any of these areas unless it's been mandated by Hashem from the outset. I'm saying I started off by recalling two Talmud and a friend who's passed away. I remember once in Gateshead, I went to see my Rov, Rabbi Rakov, the Gateshead Rov, the Katzadik Livracha. And in the middle of our conversation, it came up with somebody whom I knew in the community, Mr. Bindiger, that was the famous Rabbi Miller of Gateshead Seminary's father-in-law, had passed away, and I hadn't heard this, and I was really quite surprised and shocked and a bit upset. And I said to my Rov, Rabbi Rakov, oh, he passed away. How old was he? And he looked at me with a little smile and he said, how old was he? He was at precisely the age when Hashem Yisborach wanted his neshama back again. Which, of course, is the correct perspective to take. Everything is mandated by Hashem. From the outset, he knows which event will ultimately be good for us, both in this world and the world to come. If, from our perspective, events do not seem to be for our good, and certainly at the moment, it doesn't sound too fabulous, invariably, it will be apparent later. How many times does a person in their life say, at the time, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen, but now it's that sort of like aha moment. You should know that Hashem's interactions with us in all matters we mentioned above, whether they seem bad or good, ultimately unite in a common benevolent goal. You should also know that in none of these areas can anyone help you avoid what Hashem's designed for you. Additionally, no one can become the instrument for carrying out this plan, negatively or positively, unless Hashem allows him to play that role. This is all very frum stuff, but we're going to get to some serious practical stuff very shortly, so hang in there. The moment of your birth or death, health or illness is not decided by others, nor is it possible to acquire your food, clothing, shelter, and any other physical requirements unless Hashem appoints others to carry out his plans for you. It is clear to someone with faith that all the elements of his life depend on Hashem's design. He's certain that what he chooses for him will be the best choice possible. Nevertheless, he's still required, very important, which is really why I wanted to extract this bit for tonight's share. He's still required to pursue things that bring him benefit. Now, let's just say that again, it's very important. If you're a Baal Emunah, if you're a Baal Bitachon, you know that nothing in your life happens except Hashem makes it happen. He's certain that what he chooses, Hashem chooses for you, is the best possible choice. Nevertheless, Hashem still expects you, required you to pursue things that bring you benefit. In fact, we're expected to exercise our judgment to acquire things that will be most beneficial to him. Of course, it all comes from Hashem, but you still have to do your ishtadlus. We still have to do our work in order to, we're not allowed to, in other words, to be samachal and sit back and say, okay, Hashem, You can do anything, so just a couple of $1 million, that would be very nice. Just the letterbox is there, the mailbox is there. At the same time, he has to know that the circumstances allow him to acquire those things were decreed from the beginning. So there's a strange thing going on there. There's a balance to strike. It comes from Hashem. You've got to be certain of that. But know that Hashem expects you to do the work necessary for that thing to be produced. Don't expect an open miracle. For example, even though Hashem supervises people's lives and decides how long they will live, you're still obliged to do things that will safeguard and prolong your life. That's very important. And today, when there are so many people, not so many people, but there are some people who are, for some reason, absolutely confident that they can, still make minyanim and mix together and don't have to take precautions. The Vilna Gaon says that the Pasuk says, Sharma ma'oidus nafshasechem, guard your life very much. Ma'oid, says the Vilna Gaon, whenever that word appears, it means to the nth degree. The absolute maximum you can do. You've got to look after your life. Anything that's a dangerous pursuit, don't do it. It's an Issa D'Oraisa.
And now, do you need to go out with masks, or can you just wear gloves?
Yes, I think so. And for a very simple reason, that there is clear evidence that the countries and societies which people do go with masks are doing much better in this particular situation than are people in the United States of America. As here, or people I come from in the UK, I think they're actually now forcing people in the UK. It does help. And then there's also some discussions what kind of masks, etc. Even if the surgical masks only keep out 60%, fine, but that's going to increase people's survival rate and non-contamination rate by 60%. That's better than nothing. So he says, for example, even though Hashem supervises people's lives and decides how long they will live, you're still obliged. You'll say, oh, well, look, it doesn't make a difference. My name's on the bullet. If my name's on the bullet, no, you're not allowed to think like that. That's not Jewish perspective. You're still obliged by Hashem to do things that will safeguard and prolong your life. Oh, he might decide that your efforts are to nil, to no avail. Doesn't matter. You've got to do your bit. This rule in the Gemara behind Hashem's calculations, that's entirely his business, not yours. We're supposed to do what Hashem wants us to do, and that is look after our lives. You have to acquire a healthy food, drink, clothing, and shelter. You mustn't think Hashem has already decided how long I should live, so it won't make any difference whether I exert myself to seek out a livelihood. That is, as the American expression has it, duh, that's totally wrong. Nor can you put yourself in danger employing what is a clear distortion of Jewish faith. You should not conclude, Hashem has already decided when my time is up. I cannot die before my time. I can therefore drink too much or live a reckless and dangerous lifestyle, and that won't affect the preordained outcome. That's simply not Judaism. That's a complete distortion. This extends to any dangerous activity where your survival is doubtful. I would never go skydiving. For example, I don't like that sort of thing. I am a licensed and qualified scuba diver, but I think that's much safer, and I'm happier to float under the waves than flying through the air. But what is, halachically, of course, there is a definition for this. Everything in life, I suppose, is ultimately dangerous. If you cross a road, that's dangerous. So are you allowed to do that? So the general halakhic rule is if the vast majority of people, will consider it to be an acceptable risk, then that's fine. Whether the vast majority of people would consider jumping out of an airplane at 2,000 feet to be an acceptable risk, I don't know. But I don't, because I'm a big coward about jumping out of airplanes. But I don't mind swimming underneath the sea. But you would have to seriously, now I'm a qualified, I went the whole course and passed, very high pass rate, said he proudly. I like it, and I know how to do it safely. And the statistics show that if you're properly qualified and you do take the correct qualifications of being a scuba diver, is no more dangerous than, believe it or not, going 10-pin bowling, where people hurt themselves as well, and even die, I suppose. So that would be an acceptable risk. I don't know what the risks are for jumping out of airplanes, but bungee jumping, I would never do bungee jumping, right? And there is actually, I know of various universities that have dangerous sports societies. Sliding down mountainsides in the snow on a tray that a person serves a meal from. That's not a good idea. Okay. This extends to any dangerous activity where your survival is doubtful. The Torah itself prohibits this. Do not test Hashem. it says in Devorim, don't test them. Don't say, ah, come on, let's see. No, don't do that. If a person does test Hashem, there are only two possible outcomes. First is that you cause your own death. If you do, you will be viewed as someone who committed suicide. Your punishment will be the same as though you killed another person. Notwithstanding the fact that an individual's death is ultimately under the control of Hashem and in his hands, he still demands that you should not be responsible or complicit in somebody else's death, as it's written, do not kill. Also, the closer the victim is to the murderer, the worse the crime is. So therefore, if you're responsible for your own death, that's the worst. And that's all I wanted to say tonight. And anybody watching this, please tell people. This book's called Sharha Bitachon. As we've said in our series, everybody is a Baal Bitachon is a Baal Amunah. But not every Baal Amunah is a Baal Bitachon. Bitachon is certainty in Hashem. It's a very, very high level. And yet, somebody who has absolute certainty in Bitachon Hashem is still expected to do what he or she should do to protect their life. Is Hashem going to take that into account? Well, yes, he does take that into account. It might still be that how old was he? He was precisely the age when Hashem wanted his soul back again. But you mustn't go upstairs whenever that time is for all of us and be accused of being reckless and, as it were, have been caused, or at least tried to cause, or been neglectful of not causing your own death. Because then, as he says, that's worse than suicide. Or it is suicide. Killing somebody, bad thing. The closer you are to the person that you kill, brother, sister, Cain and Abel, remember that stuff, bad thing. But to kill yourself, that's the worst of all. In the coronavirus, all the reasonable medical precautions, take them, right? If you're as ancient as me, and I'm of course a fossil, then I have to stay at home. Do I enjoy it? I'll be doing all the stuff I normally do. But the Rabban Hashem says, Yehudi and Rubenstein, how old are you? Oh, really? Okay, well, you've got to be especially careful. I have to be more careful than the people who are watching this often, because they're younger and they've got more chance of just bouncing back and coughing and spluttering for a couple of days and just, and it's all gone. I've got to be more careful. People older than me have got to be particularly careful. What's going to happen? Everything's going to be out of Hashem. But don't be able to stand, or don't allow yourself to be able to stand there, to have to stand there and somebody with a big white angel looking at you going, you caused this. That wouldn't be a good reception. Not the sort of reception you want to get when you get upstairs.
I can't believe it about the masks.
Sorry?
I can't believe it about the masks.
Oh, yes. It's funny, in Czechoslovakia, I've found that Czechoslovakia got a very low rate of both illness and death from this. And some Czech woman was saying, because we all wear masks. We all wear masks. It's interesting because, I don't know if you know this, but Sweden, they're ignoring all of this. Groups of up to 50 are okay. All the restaurants are open. They want to protect the vulnerable who are pre-existing conditions and the old, and they want young people to, as it were, get it and then develop immunity to it.
How's that working for them?
Sorry?
How's that working for them?
So I was just going to say, it'd be very interesting to see how that's going to work. They're going to be able to see in the next 2 weeks, because it seemed to be okay at the beginning, but now it's starting to spike. So we'll see. But until we know, if fantastic, if it turns out that it makes no difference whatsoever, when you wear a mask, you don't wear a mask, then scientifically, if the medical profession would say it doesn't help, of course you don't have to wear a mask. But if the doctors say, that's what the Shabbat Talking says, if the doctors say this is what's expected of you, that's what you have to do.